Coming as a result of a warmly received concept car, the Alfa Romeo Montreal, despite being one of only 3 V8-powered post-war company models, is frequently forgotten against its sports car kin of the 1970s, often overshadowed by the likes of the Lamborghini Miura and the Maserati Merak, thereby leading to a remarkable but unknown Italian classic. The Montreal's existence is owed to the 1967 Montreal Expo in Quebec, a venue to celebrate Canada's centennial, this occasion being marked by an event that would welcome participants from 62 countries and saw more than 57 million visitors pass through its doors, one of the pavilions being dubbed Man the Producer, and would showcase the results of human imagination over the last century. Of the exhibits to be displayed in this pavilion would be the car, though the organizers, rather than showing historic vehicles like the Ford Model T, preferred that futuristic show cars be demonstrated instead, the proviso being that the concepts presented should be perfectly functional machines that could be easily converted for full-scale production. Answering the call of the many established car makers invited to submit their proposals was Alfa Romeo of Italy, who would present 2 models for the show, these machines being designed in Turin by the Italian Carrozzeria Bertoni, and were the brainchild of Marcello Gandini, with the overall shape of both concepts resembling his earlier sketch work for the Lamborghini Miura, a pioneer of the Italian supercar. Apart from the Miura-derived cues, such as the shape of the fastback-style body or side windows, the cars, which were put together in only 9 months, shared elements from earlier Bertoni designs, with the slotted elements partially covering the headlights being derived from the Porsche 911 Spider concept, while at the same time, the imposing side vents were unquestionably inspired by the Alfa Romeo Kanguro, albeit this time they were enlarged and placed in the C-pillars rather than behind the front wheels. Moreover, unlike the famous Miura, which was powered by a V12 mounted amidships atop an advanced semi-monocoque chassis, the fully functional Alfa concepts were built around the underpinnings of the tiny Giulia Sprint GT, and were both provided a conventional front-mounted 1.6-litre Valbero 4-cylinder borrowed from the Giulia 1600 Ti that was good for 90 horsepower. Starting in April and ending in October, the Expo 67 was a huge success for Alfa's 2 then-unnamed concepts, both of which were received with exceptional warmness, the company officials being flooded with questions regarding what the resultant production models would consist of, including price, release date, and most importantly, whether they would include a V8 power unit. By the time the Expo drew to a close, the cars had picked up the name Montreal, as bestowed by eager visitors, and although the idea of mass-producing these concepts was never considered by the management in Milan, the overwhelmingly positive response from the millions of Expo 67 attendees convinced them to develop a production version. In terms of the car's potential market reach, the overwhelmingly positive reaction of the predominantly North American visitors at the Expo 67 meant Alfa Romeo had to consider tailoring the production version for the United States and Canada, though in order to be successful, the car needed something better than the tiny 4-cylinder, thus seeing Auto Delta, Alfa's racing division, commissioned to develop a power unit that would meet the stringent emissions regulations of the USA. With limited time and funds to develop a new power plant from scratch, the engineers chose to adapt the 2-litre twin-cam V8 previously used in the Tipo 33 prototype race car and its rare road-legal sibling, the gorgeous 33 Stradale, this power unit being enlarged to 2.6 litres, upgraded with fuel injection, and mated to a ZF 5-speed manual gearbox, the dry-sump lubricated 8-cylinder being rated at 197 horsepower. With the V8 bored and stroked to 2.6 litres, this traded the racing engine's 10,000 RPM redline for mid-range torque, the production engine employing an aluminium block and heads, hemispherical combustion chambers, and a dry-sump oil system, but utilized Alfa-SPICA mechanical fuel injection as per America-bound 4-cylinder Alfas. In terms of physical dimensions, the Montreal was roughly 5 inches longer than the 1750 GTV Coupe, but shared the same wheelbase and rode a modified version of the same platform, thus seeing the use of unassisted recirculating ball steering, coil springs and anti-roll bars front and rear, double wishbones in front, and a lightweight live axle in back, while ventilated disc brakes and wider wheels and tires were fitted to cope with the Montreal's weight and power. Like the concept cars, Bertoni was commissioned to create the production version, and Marcello Gandini was once again in charge of the project, though rather than distilling the initial design, the stylist worked hard to improve and adapt it to comply with regulations from the world's most important markets. Now built around the Giulia GTV chassis, the front and rear ends were reshaped, while the top of the wheel arches were slightly flared, some of the more notable additions being slotted headlight covers that would now retract when the lights were turned on, and a faux Nacer duct fitted in the middle of the hood to conceal a bulge required by the new engine. Unveiled at the 1970 Geneva Motor Show and officially named Montreal, Alfa's new flagship retained the concept's most eye-catching features, while being based on an improved chassis and coming with a larger, more powerful race-derived engine, thereby creating a somewhat unique situation wherein the production version outmatched the initial concept in every conceivable way. Unfortunately, the Alfa Romeo Montreal's troubles began following the 1970 launch, with development delays and Italy's ongoing labour disputes pushing the public release back by over a year, and thus meaning it wouldn't be until 1971 that a sufficient number of Montreals would be available for widespread sales entry, though Italian customers could receive their examples towards the end of 1970. However, other European markets wouldn't be provided Montreals until 1971, while the matter of meeting American emission and safety regulations was a hurdle never overcome, and the Montreal would never enter sales in the much sought-after United States. Other problems with the production, including the cost of developing the V8 and crafting its special body, which was subject to an especially convoluted assembly process. To build the Montreal, the basic structure was made at Alfa's Arese factory near Milan, then shipped to Bertoni's plants around Turin for body fitting, and then back to Arese for final assembly, the cost of this process being reflected in its exceptional retail price, which cost twice as much as the 2000 GTV. Regardless, the machine that entered sales in 1971 received a somewhat mixed reception from customers, its 200 horsepower and 2,900 pound curb weight creating a car that was quick for the standards of the time, with 0 to 60 measured in less than 8 seconds and a top speed of more than 135 miles an hour, while the V8's free-revving nature and addictive exhaust note were also complemented. By contrast, though, such an emphasis had been placed into the V8 power unit that the rest of the package was sadly less engaging, the suspension being tuned for strong initial understeer, and while this could have been balanced with the throttle, the fatter tires and extra weight on the nose made fast cornering or parking lot maneuvers troublesome, its woes being further added to by its vague brakes, mediocre ventilation, and unintuitive dashboard. Ultimately, the V8 was the Montreal's undoing, as while the engine was charismatic, it was also extremely thirsty and expensive to run, made worse by the fact that proper maintenance and repair required a technician with specialized tools, this being yet another contributing factor as to why Alfa Romeo chose not to certify this promising machine for sale in the United States. Following the 1973 oil crisis, sales interest in the Montreal, like with many of its contemporary sports cars, collapsed overnight, while a brief and largely unsuccessful racing career did little to help revive its fortunes, the Montreal remaining on sale until as late as 1977, with total production seeing 3,925 units assembled across its 7-year run. In the end, while the Montreal disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, it was sadly not able to maintain the exceptional hype it was able to garner at the 1967 Expo, though the car still has the distinction of being Alfa's only post-war attempt at creating a regular production V8, the only other V8 products for the company after 1945 being the 33 Stradale, which barely qualified, while Alfa's next V8 model, the Maserati-based 8C Competizione, was a limited edition run, and only saw 1,000 units built during 2010. At the same time, the car, despite being hamstrung by its engine and complicated build, maintained many positive attributes that created a definitive Alfa Romeo, including highly controllable road manners, a race-derived V8 that delivered 90% of the torque as early as 3,000 RPM, while also making an incredible sound, and was also fitted with a 5-speed gearbox that was, in mechanical terms, as close to perfection as possible. Therefore, while the Montreal is considered largely a failure in terms of sales, and is seldom remembered alongside other Italian sports cars of its day, the resultant machine was one of exceptional personality and charisma that helps it to stand out against its contemporaries, and had all the momentum to create a car that was on par with such venerable classics like the Miura had circumstances not conspired against it.